So these are your 10 most common supplement questions. We're gonna go through these today. I'm gonna try to answer them for you. And we are gonna start with number one, just right out of the gate. Do I need to take supplements, or can I get everything from food? This is a really great question. I get this one super frequently, and ideally, yes, we want to try and get as much as possible from our food. Remember that a supplement is meant to be just that. It's meant to enhance an already healthy diet. We don't want supplements taking the place of the nutrients that we should be getting from our food. We oftentimes are going to be missing key nutrients such as fiber when we're relying on supplements, even things like green powders, to provide antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, things that we should be getting from our food. Even if we think about protein supplementation, liquid protein supplementation isn't going to necessarily be as beneficial from a biological enzyme production, hormone stimulating standpoint as food that you actually have to chew, your body has to break down, digest. It's not going to be as beneficial from a metabolic health standpoint. Now, we do use supplementation such as whey protein in the event that we don't have access to quality protein. We use it for convenience. Multivitamins, definitely, we want to be able to use those to kind of cover the gaps. And also if we're very physically active or we get exposed to a lot of stressors, especially environmental or occupational hazards and stressors, we are typically going to need slightly higher amounts of some of our common minerals and vitamins than the general population. So we don't want supplementation to take the place of food, but we should also be supplementing to cover gaps. I think if you're going to prioritize supplementation, definitely the top few that I'm going to recommend that I would consider essential are going to be things like your multivitamin, your fish oil, your magnesium. I would even say pending vitamin D level testing, you would need to get probably vitamin D supplementation going as well. Those are kind of like my top 5 that I recommend to everybody. Even if you're eating a varied diet, even if you're getting a lot of fruits and vegetables, even if you're hitting your protein intake on a daily basis, it's pretty well known that you are probably not getting everything that you need on a daily basis. And then, we throw in the factor of having that particularly hazardous job, particularly high levels of physical activity, you're probably going to need to supplement. So food first, we always want to get that right. We want to supplement where needed. We want to kind of hit those essentials. And then we test to determine if we need additional supplementation. All right, question 2. So this was the second one that I got this week. So this kind of goes along with the protein supplementation that I just talked about. So somebody asked, should I have whey protein or casein protein? And so these two proteins, if you're going to be supplementing with protein, can be beneficial for different reasons. Typically, your whey protein, most people are going to utilize that throughout the day. I guess when you're comparing whey to casein protein, whey is typically considered your faster digesting protein, whereas casein is typically considered your slower digesting protein. You are going to see sometimes where people who are wanting to maybe increase their weight, they'll do like a casein protein in the evening because it digests a little bit slower. Really, it's going to be whatever you tolerate, honestly. Most of the protein products that you're going to see on the market are probably going to be that whey concentrate or whey isolate. There are some things to be aware of. So one of the things we want to look at is the quality of your protein supplementation. It has been coming out a lot recently that there are a few proteins on the market that don't actually have as much protein in them as they are saying on their label. There's also been some issues with protein companies falsely kind of elevating the protein content that they can put on the food label by manipulating nitrogen. So we want to be really aware of that. And the new thing now is a third-party stamp specifically for protein-based products. So I can actually show you that. And so you can see there, hold it. So you can kind of see there that there is an informed protein stamp on it. So that is one of the newer third-party testing stamps that you are going to start seeing pop up on your whey supplements or your protein supplements. Okay, so that's one way that you can consider, okay, like what is the quality of my protein? Like I said, as far as taking whey protein versus casein protein, most people are going to do a little bit better on whey for the most part. The other thing too is to remember that they really both come from dairy products. They both come from milk. They're just processed and a little bit differently. All right. When's the best time to take creatine? So this one comes up pretty frequently also. I've probably answered this question like 3 times already this week. When it comes to creatine, there is a few studies out there, depending on what your goal is with taking creatine, that shows there could be a benefit with taking it pre-workout if you're looking for some type of performance benefit. I think specifically some of the studies I've read in the past talked about like power. And then there was one that I believe came out this year that talked about the benefit of taking creatine after. There are many, many, many more studies showing that it doesn't really matter if you've hit that point where you're saturated with creatine. So if you're taking creatine consistently for at least that 21 days or so, you are going to be saturated. And so it's unlikely to matter significantly when you're actually taking your creatine supplement, whether it be pre-workout, post-workout, morning, evening. So I think at that point, it's really just a matter of personal preference. Is there a pre-workout that I can take, or are most pre-workouts just overhyped caffeine? Yeah, I would say if you're taking a stimulant-based pre-workout, these things are definitely not my favorite. I think they have a tendency to do more harm than good. And the reason I say that is because most pre-workouts are going to have very large amounts of caffeine in them. And caffeine, even if taken earlier in the day, can potentially have effects later on in the evening when you're trying to get to sleep. So it can cause issues with sleep latency, or how long it takes you to fall asleep. It can cause issues with staying asleep. If you're someone who maybe deals with a little bit of anxiety, then this can exacerbate those symptoms. Typically, if somebody wants to take a pre-workout and they're looking for those ingredients that maybe help with blood flow and circulation, right? Kind of getting a pump or getting amped up, you can take those ingredients separately, the citrulline, the arginine, the beta-alanine. Or you can do a non-stim pre-workout, something that doesn't have any caffeine in it at all. One of the things about pre-workout is a lot of times it's really just a ritualistic thing that people do prior to training. You know, they're getting ready to go train, they're going to get their stuff ready, change their clothes, they're going to hit that pre-workout and kind of get in that mindset. Or somebody could be taking it because they're experiencing fatigue. If they're training maybe later in the day, or to help them wake up instead of coffee. A lot of times I'm going to tell people that the best pre-workout that you can take is probably going to be some carbohydrates, some salt or electrolytes, but salt is really great, and some fluids. Okay, we're not dry scooping salt, but we can definitely mix it in our water. You guys have seen, like, one of the things that I really like to do is kind of hit like that mango juice. And I'll put some magnesium powder in there. I will throw some sodium in there and kind of use that as like a pre-workout liquid. So I think that's a really great option because you're getting kind of like the carbs, the salt, the fluids, especially if you're someone who trains early in the morning and you don't necessarily want a lot of food on your stomach. Getting some of that carbohydrate from the juice, I think, is a good option. But stimulant containing caffeine-based pre-workouts, I would say that's a no-go. Okay, and this is a good one, and this came up particularly because we're doing a fat loss challenge in the private group. And so one of the questions was, what supplements actually support fat loss? Truthfully, there's not going to be a supplement that I believe truly is beneficial for fat loss. Now, there's a bunch of these products on the market, like these skinny teas and these gut cleanses, right, which really give you a laxative effect and might make you feel like you're losing weight or that you have less bloat. But really, it's just kind of like stimulating your guts to move. It's creating like an effect where you might be having more frequent bathroom stops. I've had some people say that they get diarrhea on things like that. There is some research around things like cayenne peppers and things like that. But as far as something that I would consider a true fat loss supplement, I don't think that there is one. And even if a supplement company is trying to tell you that they have weight loss supplements or there's certain supplement can help stimulate body fat loss, like that just doesn't really exist. What do I need if I'm working a 48-hour shift and I've had poor sleep? How do I recover? Yeah, so if you are one of those individuals who is working a long shift, 48, 96, I've heard that a few times. Sometimes it's more common to see shorter recovery periods, so potentially even down to 72 hours. It kind of just depends if we're talking specifically about the fire service, like where you work. There are some things that you can do to help with sleep along the lines of supplementation. When we look at some of the recent studies with creatine, there has been some that have come out that have shown that higher doses of creatine in those sleep-deprived time periods could potentially help mitigate kind of some of those symptoms and help with cognitive performance. And so when we're talking about creatine, we're talking pretty high dose. It's going to be typically a 20-gram bolus dose, if I recall from the study, where you're taking that 20 grams kind of all at one time. And there is a limit to like how many days of sleep deprivation you can experience before you start to lose some of those benefits. So when I'm working with my guys who are doing a lot of activities, dealing with overpressure, who are at high risk for concussion, falls, that kind of thing, just to protect the brain, we do also high doses of creatine. When you're in a sleep-deprived state, that is going to affect your brain and your cognition. So it does make sense to me that we're seeing benefits with that, along with that higher dose of creatine. There are some other strategies outside of supplementation that you can do, such as sleep banking or just making sure you're getting proper recovery sleep afterwards. And when we're looking at getting recovery sleep afterwards, some supplements that can help with that are going to be things like HTP, 5-HTP, which is tryptophan, which is going to be a precursor to serotonin and melatonin. We are going to be looking at things like magnesium glycinate or threonate, which has been shown to be beneficial for sleep. Making sure that you have a good sleep routine, not only when you're on recovery, but also when you're on shift, right? So are we laying in our cot, scrolling on our phone when we should be sleeping? Are we watching TV when we should be sleeping? Like, what are we doing when we could potentially be sleeping instead? And that can be difficult, but trying to find some routine, kind of like on all the chaos, is going to help. Green powders, worth it or a waste of money? So there's a lot of different types of green powders on the market. I would say green, red, all kinds of different colored powders on the market. There's not really a category for green powders or antioxidant powders. Some are going to be most of them are going to be very different from each other. So you're going to have some green powders that are just straight dehydrated vegetables and fruits, right? Typically no fiber. And you're really just taking them as a substitute for your fruits and vegetables or to enhance your already normal diet. You're going to see some powders that are green, but may not necessarily have just fruits and vegetables in them. So a good example is like the Athletic Greens. It's not a green powder, even though a lot of people refer to it as that. It does have some of that dehydrated antioxidants in it from fruits and veggies, but it also has a significant amount of vitamin D in it. It also has, I believe, a full vitamin and mineral complement in it. There's some digestive enzymes. And even Athletic Greens don't call themselves a green powder. They are a multi-mineral supplement. There's really not been any significant benefits that I'm aware of shown in research that these things can help you on a long-term basis, especially if we're using these things to replace things that you should have in your diet. Now, if you're somewhere where there aren't fresh fruits and vegetables, where you can't get those things regularly, where you're very low resourced, which can sometimes happen. For instance, if you're in the military on deployment and you're in some pretty austere locations, could something like that benefit you? Maybe, but if you're already taking a multivitamin with you, it will also depend on like what you can pack out. Like, are you going to be able to take those kinds of things? Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you're just at the whim of the land around you and what resources you have locally. So not a fan of green powders. I personally wouldn't waste my money on them. You're better off getting real fruits and vegetables. Or if you are not like a fruit and vegetable person, I'd rather you did some type of like juicing or smoothies to complement your regular diet if you're wanting to do something like that. Should I take electrolytes every day or only when I'm training and sweating? This is a really good question. So I would say if you're not someone who trains regularly in the heat, if you're not somebody who's going out in gear regularly for your job and sweating a lot, right? So firefighters come to mind. If you're going out on a call, you're in your gear, you're sweating underneath it, especially summer's rolling around, it's gonna be hot no matter where you go. And then on top of that, you're trying to be physically active, then you should definitely be doing electrolytes. Now, how much you're going to do is going to vary a little bit. When we look at hydration, it's going to be not just a matter of how much fluid you're taking in, but also how much fluid and how much sodium and electrolytes you're taking in as a ratio. So there's a certain amount that we want. What we typically will tell individuals, hey, if you're in a situation where you're sweating a lot, you're training, you're probably looking at close to 800 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium per liter of water when you're actively sweating, okay? So this could be training outside. This could be when you're out on a call. Recommendations typically are going to be anywhere from 500 to 1,000. But I will tell you, with the guys that I'm working with, when we put hydration monitors on them and when we look at body weight measurements from time of starting activity, if we're in a controlled environment, to the time of ending activity, they are losing way more fluid and way more sodium than some of the standard recommendations. Even if we look at like military reference intakes, the sodium limit on those is going to be much higher than it is for the Gen Pop. Sodium recommendations for Gen Pop is around 2,300 milligrams per day. For military personnel in a training environment, we're looking at 5,000 plus milligrams per day. So big difference. So this is the way that I like to do it. I think when you wake up in the morning, if you're active, if you're one of those individuals who's considered working in the tactical space, right, then you should be starting your day off with fluids and probably some electrolytes as well. I think you should salt your food throughout the day. And then if you are training, you should be taking in some fluid and electrolytes prior to training and fluid and electrolytes after training, okay? If you're doing longer sessions, you might need it during those longer training sessions, just depending on what you're doing. But that's where, when you're talking to me or when I'm working with you, we kind of determine what those electrolyte and fluid needs look like, depending on what you're doing, what your goals are, what your training program looks like. So should you take electrolytes daily? Yes, I think for the most part, most of you should be taking electrolytes daily. Okay, so what supplements do you personally take every day and why? Yeah, I'll be honest with you guys. Some days I'm not really great at taking like my core supplementation, like my multivitamins, my fish oil, my creatine, my vitamin D, my magnesium, right? My magnesium I'm pretty good about because I take that before bed and I really value my sleep. So my nighttime supplements are typically the ones that I never miss. I will frequently, though, leave the house sometimes without taking my multivitamin and my morning fish oil. It just happens, right? Even though sometimes they're sitting by the doors, I'm getting the kids ready or the kid ready, and we're kind of going out the door, I might forget to stop and grab it on the way out, even though I've set up my space so that my water cooler is right there, my supplements are right there, my keys are right there. So as I'm walking out the door, I should be able to stop and do it. But sometimes I don't know, it just doesn't happen, right? But the 5 essentials, I take them every single day. And then some additional supplementation, I will say that I do on top of that is that nighttime supplementation. So I'm going to take L-theanine in the evening along with some GABA just to help me sleep with my magnesium. Also, I take biotin because the hair, right? So those are kind of mine that I take. One of the things that I like to tell people is don't over supplement yourself. And what I mean by that is, yes, we have that list of the 5 essentials we should be taking, but you really don't need to go beyond that unless you're doing it for a specific purpose, or we've done your lab testing and you have like a specific goal that you're working towards. Probiotics, I will say this, is one that I typically am not going to do oral supplementation with unless we've done like your gut health testing, your GI map testing, and we need to supplement with a specific probiotic. Usually with those, I'm going to recommend, hey, try to get those from your food. So do the sauerkraut, the kimchi, the kombucha, the yogurts on a daily basis to get some of those probiotics in, especially the lactobacillus and the bifidum bacterias. But that's kind of just how I approach it. Just supplement with what you need. Don't waste your money on this shit that you don't need. All right, so that was some good questions. Hopefully you got something valuable out of that. If you have questions of your own, make sure you drop them in the comment section below so I can get those answered for you. If you would like, you can also download our essential supplement guide so you can get more information on what supplements might be right for you.